伤心流泪，也曾黯然心碎，这是爱的代价。
小雨淅沥沥沥沥沥，淅沥沥沥下个不停。山谷里的小溪哗啦啦啦啦啦，哗啦啦啦流不停。小雨为谁飘？小溪为谁流？带着满怀的凄情。3月里的小雨淅沥沥沥沥沥，淅沥沥沥下个不停。山谷里的小溪哗啦啦啦啦啦，哗啦啦啦流不停。小雨陪伴我，小溪听我诉，可知我满怀的寂寞。请问小溪，谁带我追寻那一颗爱我的心？淅沥沥沥沥沥，淅沥沥沥下个不停。山谷里的小溪哗啦啦啦啦啦，哗啦啦啦流不停。小雨陪伴我，小溪听我诉，可知我满怀的寂寞。请问小溪，谁带我追寻那一颗爱我的心？追寻那一颗爱我的心。 追寻每一颗爱我的心。
From the roots up, CIUT 89.5 FM, Toronto.
Friday, September the 27th.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of CIUT FM.
From New York, this is Democracy Now!
Hell is breaking news in Lebanon. An all-out war must be avoided at all costs. It would surely be an all-out catastrophe. The people of Lebanon, as well as the people of Israel and the people of the world, cannot afford Lebanon to become another Gaza.
Israel is continuing to bombard Lebanon after rejecting an international call for a 21-day ceasefire. We'll go to Beirut for the latest. Then, in a major expose, ProPublica reveals the Biden administration decided to keep arming Israel even after USAID and the State Department's Refugees Bureau concluded Israel was deliberately blocking humanitarian aid to Gaza.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken rejected the findings from his foremost experts on humanitarian assistance. They had found that the Israelis had deliberately blocked shipments of medicine and food into Gaza. Antony Blinken told Congress the opposite was true, so that arms could continue flowing into Israel.
But first, to the blockbuster news here in New York City. Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted on federal charges. Agents have raided his residence at Gracie Mansion early this morning. We'll speak to a reporter and the first New York City Council member to call for his resignation a week ago. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, War, Peace, and the Presidency. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's rejected a possible ceasefire as it continues its assault on Lebanon. The U.S., France, Canada, Australia, Japan, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia have called for a 21-day ceasefire as the death toll in Lebanon tops 620 people, at least 72 of those killed Wednesday. Despite resounding international warnings against escalating attacks, Israel's doubling down with its military chief, Herzi Halevi, telling troops on the front line Wednesday, "You hear the jets overhead. We have been striking all day. This is both to prepare the ground for your possible entry and to continue degrading Hezbollah," unquote. 500,000 people in Lebanon are now believed to be displaced. Hospitals are overrun with victims of Israeli attacks. This is Dr. Adel Rai, director of the Rai Hospital in Sidon.
نحن استقبلنا من يوم الاثنين لليوم
Since Monday until today, we have received 136 wounded, including 36 martyrs. Among those 36 martyrs, 18 were torn to pieces. There are still bodies in the morgue that require DNA testing for identification.
We'll go to Lebanon for the latest later in the broadcast. Here in New York, Lebanon's interim Prime Minister, Najib Mikati, pleaded with the UN Security Council Wednesday to intervene to stop Israel's bombardment during an emergency session. He said, quote, Israel's violating our sovereignty by sending their warplanes and drones to our skies, unquote. Iran's Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, spoke from the sidelines of the UN Security Council meeting Wednesday.
The Security Council must act now to halt Israel's war and enforce an immediate ceasefire, and by that to save innocent lives. If not, the region risks full-scale conflict, and history will hold Israel's enablers, especially the United States, responsible. Iran will not remain indifferent in case of a full-scale war in Lebanon. We stand with the people of Lebanon with all means.
This comes as a new Oxfam report is calling for urgent reform of the, quote, colonial and archaic, unquote, UN Security Council. Oxfam says the UN Security Council's 5 permanent members, U.S., Russia, China, the UK, and France, are all failing people living in conflict as they consistently abuse their veto power in their own interests, blocking opportunities for peace around the world. In Gaza, displaced Palestinians are expressing solidarity with Lebanese people under Israeli attack.
What is happening to us in Gaza is happening to Lebanon now. I have been displaced from the north for the last 5 months, and the world is quiet and is still standing by Israel. How is it the world is standing by it? In what viewpoint are they standing by them? How did they see the oppressor and how did they see the oppressed? I don't understand how. I don't know how to comprehend this in my head. This mass genocide, the massacre of children, women, elderly, and making us live in tents and crises that have no end. And now they are doing the same to Lebanon. But the war will not end unless it ends in Lebanon. If it ends in Lebanon, it will end in Gaza.
Elsewhere in Gaza, the Palestinian Health Ministry refused to receive an Israeli truck filled with the unidentified remains of 88 Palestinians killed by Israel. A distraught mother searching for her missing son went to meet the truck.
I got a call telling me there are dead bodies coming from Israel. I came running to see if my son is fine or dead. I want to know if he's among the dead bodies. Look, these are dead bodies being thrown. They throw it to the people, left them to the streets. And their families cannot identify their bodies. Here is the truck. The bodies are inside. We cannot see them.
The Committee to Protect Journalists reports an unprecedented number of journalists and media workers have been arrested by Israeli forces across the occupied West Bank over the last year. CPJ has documented a total of 54 such arrests since October 7. 36 remain jailed, including 14 held without charge under Israel's administrative detention policy. Among them is Palestinian journalist Mujahed al-Sadi, who was beaten along with his wife by Israeli soldiers during a violent raid on their home in the early hours of September 19th. He's since had no contact with his lawyer or family. In Sudan, the military has launched airstrikes and artillery attacks in Khartoum as it undertakes a major offensive to retake control of the capital city from the paramilitary rapid support forces. This comes as Sudan's health ministry announced more than 430 people have died of cholera in the past month. Meanwhile, the Doctors Without Borders report pregnant people and newborn babies are dying in shocking numbers after the conflict led to the collapse of Sudan's health system. Sudan's military leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is addressing the UN General Assembly in New York today. Federal agents searched the official residence of New York City Mayor Eric Adams early Thursday morning, just hours before prosecutors are expected to reveal details of a federal criminal indictment against the mayor. This morning, the indictment remains sealed in Manhattan federal court. The New York Times reports investigators are looking into whether Adams conspired with the Turkish government to funnel illegal foreign donations into his mayoral campaign. They're also probing his ties to 5 other countries: China, Israel, South Korea, Uzbekistan, and Qatar. A growing number of Democrats have called on Adams to resign, including New York Congressmember Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. We'll have the latest on the federal corruption probe into Mayor Eric Adams and his administration after headlines. We'll speak with a reporter and the first New York City Council member to call for his resignation. The Congressional Black Caucus is calling for Louisiana Republican Congressmember Clay Higgins to be censured after he posted, then deleted under pressure, a racist diatribe criticizing Haitian immigrants as thugs. On Wednesday, Congressmember Higgins mocked the nonprofit Haitian Bridge Alliance after it filed criminal charges against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance in Ohio for their repeated lies that Haitian immigrants in Springfield are eating their neighbors' pets. Higgins wrote on social media, quote, "Lol. These Haitians are wild, eating pets, voodoo, nastiest country in the Western Hemisphere, cults, slapstick gangsters, but damned if they don't feel all sophisticated now, filing charges against our president and VP. All these thugs better get their mind right and their ass out of our country before January 20th, the MAGA Congressmember said. Lawmakers are set to vote on the censure resolution when the House returns from its recess after the November election. The U.S. Senate Wednesday unanimously passed a resolution honoring Wadi Al-Fayumi, the 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy from Illinois who was murdered in a hate crime last October, shortly after Israel launched its assault on Gaza. CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, said, quote, "His murder is a painful reminder of the deadly consequences of anti-Palestinian hate and Islamophobia." Chicago Congressmember Adelia Ramirez, one of the resolution's authors, is calling on her colleagues to swiftly pass the companion House resolution. You can see our recent interview with Congressmember Ramirez at democracynow.org. He was murdered by his white landlord. Former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has endorsed a global fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty.
The world has come together many times to tackle significant threats, saving the ozone, banning landmines, negotiating a nuclear ban treaty. Now, we must do it again, this time for fossil fuels, an industry that fuels the climate crisis, wars, biodiversity loss, and air pollution.
To learn more about the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative, you can see our interview this week with its president, Kumi Naidoo, at democracynow.org. In Mexico, protesters are commemorating the 10th anniversary of the disappearance of 43 students from the Ayotzinapa Rural Teachers College. Family members continue to demand justice and accountability for the members of Mexico's armed forces and police who worked with a local drug cartel to abduct the students in Guerrero State on September 26, 2014. This is a lawyer for the relatives of the disappeared.
Aquí nos encontramos presentes. El movimiento continuará.
Here we are present. The movement will continue. Whoever governs, we will continue to demand the return of our comrades alive. Whoever governs, we will continue to demand punishment for those responsible. Whoever governs, we will continue to demand the whereabouts of our 43 comrades.
In Thailand, same-sex couples will be able to get married starting in January. After the Thai king signed a recently passed bill into law, Thailand becomes the first country in Southeast Asia to recognize same-sex marriage. Activists celebrated the milestone in Bangkok.
Finally, it's official. Even though it's something that humans should inherently have, we just feel relieved more than anything. I believe that many people who have fought for this bill have experienced a wide range of emotions, stress, intensity, or joy as they waited. There have been many feelings from the beginning up until this very moment.
And Palestinian journalist Bisan Alda has won a News and Documentary Emmy for her Al Jazeera Plus report, It's Bisan from Gaza, and I'm Still Alive. A group of Hollywood celebrities and pro-Israel groups unsuccessfully attempted to disqualify Auda's widely acclaimed report, which chronicles her family's forced evacuation of their home in Beit Hanun after Israel launched its assault on Gaza. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Welcome to our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world. We begin today's show here in New York City, where Eric Adams has become the first mayor in the city's modern history to be indicted on federal charges. The news of the indictment broke on Wednesday night. Federal agents reportedly searched his official residence at Gracie Mansion this morning. As we broadcast, the indictment is still sealed, but the New York Times reports the federal investigation has focused, at least in part, on whether Adams took illegal campaign donations from the Turkish government. Part of the probe reportedly focuses on whether Adams pressured fire department officials to ignore safety concerns at a new 35-story Turkish consulate building near the United Nations. The Times reports Adams is also being investigated for his interactions with Israel, China, Qatar, South Korea, and Uzbekistan. Eric Adams is a Democrat and a former police officer who was elected 3 years ago. Many of Adams' top aides are also facing federal investigations. On September 12th, New York Police Commissioner Edward Caban resigned just days after federal agents searched his home and seized his cell phone. Mayor Adams' top attorney, Lisa Zornberg, abruptly resigned on September 14th. She reportedly stepped down after Adams refused to fire a number of top aides being investigated.
New York City Schools Chancellor David Banks has also announced he'll soon resign. He made the announcement after federal agents seized his phone as well as devices of several people close to him, including his partner, Sheena Wright, who serves as first deputy mayor, and Banks' brother, Phil Banks, who serves as deputy mayor of New York City for public safety, in charge of the police and fire department. Federal agents also searched the home of their brother, Terrence Banks, who works as a consultant and had contracts worth millions of dollars with the city. Federal authorities have also subpoenaed the mayor's director of asylum seeker operations, Molly Schaefer. On Wednesday night, Eric Adams released a video vowing to stay in office and fight the charges.
My fellow New Yorkers, it is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. And a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty.
On Wednesday, hours before news broke about the federal indictment, New York Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called on Mayor Adams to resign, writing on social media, quote, "I do not see how Mayor Adams can continue governing New York City. The flood of resignations and vacancies are threatening government function. Non-stop investigations will make it impossible to recruit and retain a qualified administration. For the good of the city, he should resign."
We're joined now by two guests. Tiffany Caban is the first member of the New York City Council to call for Adams to resign. She called for him to resign last week. She's a Democratic Socialist, former public defender. And we're joined by Ross Barkan, contributing writer to the New York Times Magazine, columnist for Cranes, author of the Substack Political Currents. His piece for The Nation is headlined, "Is Eric Adams' Luck About to Run Out?" Well, maybe you've answered that question, Ross. You got that answer yesterday. Can you explain what's happening, and especially for a global audience who might not have been following over these past weeks and months, the number of people, including the mayor himself, who've had their phones, electronic devices seized, the number of people who are leaving, who've resigned, and what this indictment means today?
So there's a dizzying amount of corruption investigations into Eric Adams, at least 4 different federal probes, which is unprecedented. No mayor in modern times certainly has been indicted in New York City, but even the sheer number of investigations, this indictment has yet to be unsealed. It appears to be related to the investigation pertaining to whether Eric Adams acted as a foreign agent and tried to assist the Turkish government and possibly took money from Turkey. But again, that's still speculation until the indictment is unsealed today. So I don't want to go too deep into that. What I can say is that a sitting mayor of New York, never been indicted. We are in uncharted waters. He is in great political peril. Many politicians, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, are calling for him to resign. He's up for re-election next year. He has said he will not resign. I do think he will stay in office as long as he possibly can. If he is forced to resign, again, force would be political. The only mechanism to actually make him leave would be the governor removing him from office, and it's unclear if the governor, Kathy Hochul, will actually do that. If he steps down, the public advocate, which is this strange position unique to New York City, kind of not quite a vice president, but something like the ceremonial post that is technically the second in line of succession, the public advocate, Jumaane Williams, he becomes acting mayor, but then a special election is called by law shortly after Jumaane Williams assumes the office. The special election would be held in about 90 days from that point, and it would be nonpartisan. It would actually not be a Democratic primary, and many, many different candidates would run, probably including Jumaane Williams. So that would be truly, truly unprecedented, and cannot emphasize enough that we are entering a new terrain here with an indicted mayor of New York City.
So Tiffany Caban, you were the first city council member to call on Eric Adams to resign. Explain why. You said he's unfit to govern.
That's right. I mean, it's not just that he has been under federal investigation and now we know formally indicted, or that over 15 of his associates have been investigated, and we are going to see at least some of those folks have formal indictments unsealed later today. But it's really also a culmination of his leadership failures, right? This is wholly distracting. This is the biggest job in the biggest city in the country, and it demands the attention of every single second of your energy, your resources. We have seen a mass exodus of leadership positions. I mean, as a sitting council member who is the most local of representatives, to tell you that it's chaotic and impossible to deliver services to our constituents right now is an understatement. And you add to that throughout the entirety of his tenure in office, we have seen him being okay with NYPD abuses. We have seen him cut over and over again critical services like, homeless services, education, our library budgets, and New Yorkers deserve better. We need somebody who can take this job seriously, take public health and public safety seriously in this moment, and he can no longer do that.
Well, can you talk about his record in particular as a former police officer and what happened to the NYPD since he's been mayor?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, one of the big things that we saw happen was the resignation of Commissioner Edward Caban, which I just want to be clear, there's no relation. And that in itself was unprecedented. But under that former commissioner's leadership and under the leadership of our mayor, we have seen a decades-high number of unconstitutional stop and frisks. We have seen, as reported by the New York Civil Liberties Union, we have seen a record number of misconduct settlements, and that's our taxpayer dollars that is going into that can't go into, again, other critical services. We have seen the CCRB, which is our civilian oversight board, the commissioner, again, under the mayor's leadership, has thrown out more than half of their substantiated misconduct investigations, and that has never happened in NYPD history, right? And he has also defunded that agency and several other oversight agencies. So we have a pattern of sort of preventing the council and the general public from getting a look under the hood, which, you know, makes you think about what's happening right now. So we don't even know the breadth of what's going on within that agency, but we know it's not good.
With all these commissioners having their cell phones taken, can you reach anyone?
No. And I'll give you a perfect example. You know, currently my office is trying to get a constituent help with a pretty important and serious issue at the Department of Education. I said, well, can I call Chancellor Banks? I was told, no, the FBI has both of his cell phones. I called two other high-ranking Department of Education officials, got no calls back up to this point, right? And so you can really see just really concrete examples of how this exodus and how this distraction and chaos is really impeding our ability to deliver. I'll give you one more quick example. I have constituents coming in that, you know, are applying for SNAP benefits, food stamps, and they're waiting 3 months to get those food stamps approved. That shouldn't happen. That's the difference between going hungry and having food. They come in with an approved city FEPS voucher. That's a housing voucher here in New York City. They found an apartment, and you know the administration has to complete their paperwork. They don't do it in time, and they lose the apartment. It's the difference between being homeless and sheltered. So New Yorkers, again, this is critical. It's like life-saving, and the current administration is not delivering.
So, Tiffany Caban, you mentioned David Banks, who is the outgoing New York City Schools Commissioner. He announced he's leaving at the end of the year. He's got two brothers. He's got Phil Banks, who serves as Deputy Mayor of New York City for Public Safety, which is in charge, and Ross Barkan, I want to put this question to you, of both police and fire. It seems like the fire department is under scrutiny because of approving the Turkish consulate in New York. If you can explain what this is all about, and although the indictment has not been unsealed as we broadcast, what this scandal is about. And then the third brother, Terrence Banks, who works as a consultant, his consulting firm has gotten millions from the city.
Yeah, so lots to unpack. Well, I'll say Philip Banks first is a very close ally of Eric Adams. He's someone who left city government about a decade ago under a scandal cloud, never was indicted. Now he's had his phone seized. He has this position which is very nebulous. It actually did not exist before the Eric Adams administration. And the first police commissioner, who was somewhat independent of Eric Adams, she actually left after about a year because she didn't like that Banks was meddling so much in her affairs and not letting her discipline officers. So just to set the stage on Philip Banks. Whether Philip Banks is tied to this indictment, it's not yet clear. I do want to emphasize that, but there are other investigations. His brother Terrence was or is running a consulting firm that was trying to do business with the Department of Education. They had some new technology they were trying to sell to DOE, so there could be quid pro quo there. Again, there are so many scandal clouds, and it is more remarkable, and I do not see how politically Eric Adams will survive this. I don't think he will. I think the question for New York, as the councilwoman pointed out, is how can he govern? And how will government services be delivered? They weren't being delivered terribly well before all of this, if you go back 1 to 2 years ago. But now there is a sense of real paralysis at City Hall. And Eric Adams is defiant, and he is not so different in some ways than the former President Donald Trump, where an indictment is not going to necessarily cow him. So that again, I said uncharted waters before. You know, you've got a city of over 8 million people. You have a very powerful executive position. You have many officials who've had their phones seized. You've had resignations. And there's a sense that nothing can really happen right now. And the frightening thing is, what if there was a crisis of some kind that needed immediate executive attention? It is not clear that could be handled in any way.
Ross Barkan, could you explain whether under any circumstances it's considered legal or legitimate for city officials to receive donations from foreign governments?
No, it's not. It's illegal. So if he took this money and there is a record of that, campaign donations or something else, it is against the law. And we're going to find out very soon. There should be a press conference this morning. U.S. Attorney for the Southern District is going to indict Eric Adams, so we'll know a lot more. But acting as a foreign agent, taking foreign money, it is not permitted. The question will be, what is the evidence, and also what is the Adams defense, right? And he will be charged, has not been found guilty yet, so we will wait and see. But certainly, to get to this level, typically federal prosecutors do not like charging executives. Executives have a lot of staff around them. What you'll see is if there are corruption investigations, someone close to the executive gets charged, but not the executive himself or herself. So the fact that they're going after Adams directly is indicative that they feel confident about the case. I'll put it that way.
And Tiffany Caban, it might surprise some people to know outside of New York City, the governor of New York, in this case Kathy Hochul, can remove the mayor of New York City. And there's another entity that can. It's a new one. It's called the Inability Committee. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so that committee is made up of a number of people who get together and have a vote and have a say on that process. I know that the comptroller is, one of those people that sits on the committee along with others. So there are a couple of different mechanisms that could make it happen. But I think ultimately, when you look outside of the official mechanisms that can be used, it's going to be political pressure that pushes those mechanisms forward. And it's not going to happen without that.
And Kathy Hochul is governor because Andrew Cuomo had to step down. Ross Barkan, you wrote a whole book on him, The Prince, Andrew Cuomo, Coronavirus, and the Fall of New York. Now, he is considered a wild card, possibly running for New York City mayor. Your final comment.
Yes, he is considering a comeback. I think Andrew Cuomo must be taken seriously as a mayoral candidate in New York City. If Adams were to resign, there'd be a special election, so it'd be a very fast election held over, a short period of time relative to Democratic primaries here. So Cuomo wants a comeback. He wants redemption. He might try to seek it. He is well known throughout the city. He's certainly a scandal scarred. He has many people who find him distasteful. At the same time, he does have a fan base. He does also have some support in the working class black communities in New York City, similar to Eric Adams. So I think Andrew Cuomo, certainly among the many other candidates, the city controller Brad Lander is running, the former controller Scott Stringer, 2 state senators, possibly an assemblyman from Queens. It's going to be a very big field regardless. And so Cuomo will stand out. I would add, New York, we have ranked choice voting, so voters can rank up to 5 candidates. So it's not your typical winner-take-all primary. So if you had a winner-take-all primary, I would say Cuomo would be heavily favored to win, given the split vote problem. But in ranked choice voting, it gets a lot more interesting because candidates can form coalitions. They can say, don't rank this person. So I would consider Cuomo something of a favorite if he got in, but I also wouldn't say he's a lock to be the next mayor of New York City.
Finally, Tiffany Caban, the mayor made a statement last night. He said he is a target. Let's remember how he got his start. He was an officer, African-American police officer in New York who sued the New York City Police Department for racism. He said he's being taken down right now, or they're attempting to, because he's serving the people of New York City. Your final comment.
I'd have to disagree, but I just want to put some of this in context. His story and when he ran, he said, I joined the police department because I wanted to straighten it out from the inside. And what we've seen is actually the opposite. He's emboldened more abuses and misconduct from the NYPD. He's refused to fire officers who have killed New Yorkers in the past several years. Like I said, he's not just turning a blind eye, but really encouraging a lot of the outrageous behavior, including the suppression of the press, right? We've seen the NYPD attack journalists, push them out of spaces so that they couldn't report, and then go on and kind of film these propaganda propaganda videos. And, you know, I was a public defender for 7 years. I know how these investigations work. I will say that my clients were not being charged or accused of being foreign agents. Those are just not the types of clients we saw as public defenders. But this is part and parcel of what we've seen as a practice of the mayor in terms of not following the law, playing it fast and loose, being loyal to a fault and to our city's detriment. And these are not, you know, you don't just get these subpoenas all willy. It's not an easy thing to do. And what you'll see is that they start really wide, get more information, put pressure on folks, try to get them to flip and be cooperators, to continue to get more and more information. And Ross Barkin said it earlier, there's really a hesitation, especially with the feds, to charge executives and executives close to elections because of the destabilization fact. They know what's at stake. And so I'm just very, very curious to see how this turns out. But whether he is guilty or not, for me, is not the question at hand when it comes to, does he resign? Is he fit to govern? It's clearly, is he fit to govern under these circumstances? And the answer is no. He can have his day in court, but can he serve the people of New York today? No, he cannot.
We want to thank you both for being with us. Tiffany Caban is the first New York City Council member to call for Mayor Adams' resignation. And we want to thank Ross Barkin, contributing writer to New York Times Magazine, columnist for Crain's. His Substack is Political Currents, and we'll link to your article in The Nation, Is Eric Adams' Luck About to Run Out? Coming up, we turn to Lebanon. Israel's continuing to bomb Lebanon after rejecting an international call for a 21-day ceasefire. We'll go to Beirut for the latest.
The policy of truth.
Policy of Truth by Depeche Mode. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
We turn now to Lebanon, where some 500,000 people have been displaced by Israel's bombardment. The Lebanese Health Ministry reports at least 72 people were killed and nearly 400 wounded in Israeli attacks on Wednesday, bringing the death toll to over 620 in recent days. Earlier today, Israel rejected a proposed 21-day ceasefire that had been called for by the United States, France, Canada, Australia, Japan, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, Israel has called up 2 brigades to the Lebanese border in a sign that a ground invasion could be imminent. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for peace on Wednesday.
Hell is breaking loose in Lebanon. An all-out war must be avoided at all costs. It would surely be an all-out catastrophe. The people of Lebanon, as well as the people of Israel and the people of the world, cannot afford Lebanon to become another Gaza.
We go now to Beirut, where we're joined by Lada Bitar, editor-in-chief of the Public Source, a Beirut-based independent media organization. Lada, if you can talk about what's happening on the ground in Beirut, and here we are in New York, right next to the United Nations. You have this international call for a ceasefire, but apparently the Netanyahu government of Israel is saying no. The Israeli general in charge of the IDF forces rallying troops, saying he's preparing them for a ground invasion of Lebanon.
Good morning.
Here in Beirut, nobody really has any hope in these processes in the United Nations, in the words of the Biden administration, or in the words also of the Netanyahu government. I wanted to share with you some things that will relate to me by one of our journalists who's now working in the South. He's going around to different schools that are hosting people who have been displaced from their homes but remain in southern Lebanon. So first, he relayed to me that people are very, very tired. They're unable to sleep for longer than a few minutes at a time because of the relentless bombardment by Israel. And he said that the shelters are full with elderly people who have lived through so many massacres and witnessed so much horror inflicted by the Israeli settler colony. And he shared the story of one woman in particular. He said that she was in her 80s. She was wearing her house key as a pendant. And she told him that this is nothing in comparison to what they have lived through over the past few decades. And she mentioned the 1982 Israeli invasion of Beirut, the first Qana massacre in 1996, the second Qana massacre in 2006, and so on and so forth. And the one thing that I want to relay here is that for a lot of these people who have been displaced from their homes, whose homes have been destroyed, their attachment to their land only grows stronger. And this is a prevailing sentiment among those who have been displaced. And this is not uncommon for Lebanon. So if you will just allow me 30 seconds or so, I would like to read a brief passage that I came across yesterday, written by Mehdi Amel, who was a Marxist intellectual. And he wrote this a few months after the 1982 invasion of Beirut. And he writes, "They said that the war in Lebanon would be swift, and that in a few days those who have not knelt and who understand only the language of force would kneel. They declared that there would be no salam but shalom, and that Israel is the Rome of our modern times. To the kings of Israel, to the scum of our nation and our foul Arab regimes, to the petty fascists and to their imperialist masters we say, it pleases us to spit in your faces. We will fight you even with our nails. Our fists are the compass of history, and the bullet of our freedom will pierce your hearts. To them we say, brick by brick, we build a world on your graves. You are the dustbin of history, and Beirut is the city of the free. We have vowed that we will resist you." And this is not to say that everyone in Lebanon shares this sentiment. And definitely not the over 200,000 up to 500,000 people who have been displaced from their homes over the past few weeks. Because there is a lot of suffering, there is a lot of hardship right now. People are struggling to find housing, shelter, food, diapers, milk. Hospitals are at capacity. People are really exhausted and suffering across the board. But for the most part, this pain can be pinpointed. The source of this pain can be pinpointed to the presence of the Israeli settler state in our region that continues to wreak havoc in Palestine, in Lebanon, and across most of the world.
So Lara Bidar, you talked about this quotation that you read from the 1982 when Israel invaded in 1982, and you've said that you don't have much faith in a ceasefire. So if you could provide some context to a possible imminent invasion, Israeli invasion of Lebanon, talk about what happened in not just 1982, but also in 1978 and 2006.
I think we have to take very, very seriously every genocidal intent that is now being uttered by different government and military officials in Israel. Lebanon has a long history of invasions and occupation and terror by the Israeli state.
And we can go even further back to 47, 48. Lebanon seized over a dozen Lebanese towns and villages. In 78, there was also an invasion in 82. The 82 invasion lasted until the liberation in May 2000. There was also an attempted ground operation in 2006. And in terms of the 2006 attempted ground invasion into Lebanon, soldiers who returned home recounted how traumatizing it was for them, how they felt that they were fighting with ghosts. They could not see the fighters on the other side. So I think it's important to note that coming into Lebanon is a deeply traumatizing and frightening experience for the Israeli soldiers who are accustomed to throwing bombs from the safety of the airspace. But on the ground battle, on the ground confrontation with real fighters who are fighting for their land, for their country, for their people, they don't stand much of a chance. And to the point of pushing for a ceasefire or for a truce or for the Biden administration having any kind of red line, we saw exactly what happened in Gaza over the past 11 months. The Biden administration was repeatedly saying that Rafah was a red line, that a ground invasion into Gaza was a red line, but the Israeli state there were absolutely no repercussions, no ramifications for any of the actions that the Israeli state was doing. And this is what compelled it to continue to escalate its massacres, its terror of the Palestinian people in Gaza, who to this day continue to endure daily massacres that are not being reported on as much as they were at the beginning of the war.
Narabitar, so if you could tell us a little bit more about how you think Hezbollah might respond to a possible invasion, and also explain UN Resolution 171701, because the UN Secretary General speaking Wednesday, he warned that Lebanon is at the brink, calling for an urgent ceasefire, but he also called for the implementation of UN Resolutions 1559 and 1701.
I can't really predict how Hezbollah will respond, but what we know is that so far Hezbollah has continuously tried to de-escalate. Hezbollah is not targeting civilians or civilian infrastructure. They have consistently aimed their weapons at military infrastructure and sites and soldiers. Even after the pager attack, the walkie-talkie attack, repeated campaigns on Dahye, just a few minutes ago before I joined you, Dahye was yet again bombarded by the Israelis. I think this is the 8th attack on the Lebanese capital. Despite all of this escalation from the Israeli side, Hezbollah remains restrained, continues to try to de-escalate, and the only ask here, which is not a really unreasonable ask, is for Israel to immediately end its war on the Palestinian people of Gaza after 11 months. As far as UN resolutions, for the most part, they're not legally binding. For the most part, they're not respected. The 1701 resolution that was adopted after the 2006 war is habitually, if not daily, violated by the Israelis in a variety of different ways. That's why the majority of the Lebanese population is not holding its breath waiting for a UN resolution or for the Security Council or even for the international community. I think not just the people in Lebanon, but people around the world have completely lost faith in the so-called international order, the rule of law. So right now, we can only expect things to get significantly worse so long as the international community does not take any action to halt the insanity and the barbarism of the Israeli state, so long as the Western world continues to supply the Israelis with weapons, with support, with diplomatic cover, we have very little chance of seeing an end to this campaign anytime soon. But on the other hand, what people can do, people anywhere can boycott Israel, can put pressure on their institutions, on their universities, on the corporations in which they work in to divest from Israel. The only chance that we have is for the world and for comrades around the world to put this kind of pressure on their governments and on their institutions to isolate Israel, because Israel will only stop this campaign and this war around the region if it becomes too costly for it. And right now, it's not paying any kind of price for its actions.
As we wrap up, Laura Bitar, there is a protest that is approaching the United Nations now, especially people protesting what's happening in Gaza. You have Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, who delayed his trip by a day. He was supposed to address the UN General Assembly today. He's going to do it tomorrow. What do you expect him to say? And in the U.S. media on television, they're saying that Blinken has been desperately, rallying countries on the sidelines to get this 21-day ceasefire that the U.S., France, Canada, Australia, Japan, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia are now calling for. But you have The Guardian reporting that, in fact, an effort by France and Britain to secure a joint statement by the UN Security Council calling for a ceasefire is stalled in the face of U.S. objections. Your final thoughts, Laura.
At the risk of repeating myself, I don't see, or we, for the most part, don't really believe anything that's coming out of the Biden administration. Neither its White House spokespeople or Blinken and others who are representing the U.S. And again, we have seen these maneuvers and this manipulation of public opinion, manipulation of the press for 11 months. They are not serious about a ceasefire, neither in Gaza nor in Lebanon, regardless of what they're saying, regardless of what narrative they're trying to sell us. We're simply not buying it.
Laura Bitar, I want to thank you for being with us. Editor-in-Chief of the Public Source, a Beirut-based independent media organization, speaking to us from Lebanon. Next up, Israel deliberately blocked humanitarian aid to Gaza. Two government bodies concluded. Anthony Blinken rejected them. We'll speak to the reporter who exposed this story in ProPublica. Stay with us. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
ProPublica has revealed USAID and the State Department's Refugees Bureau both concluded this spring that Israel had deliberately blocked deliveries of food and medicine into Gaza. But U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other top Biden officials rejected the findings of the agencies, even though they're considered the two foremost U.S. authorities on humanitarian assistance. Blinken's decision allowed the U.S. to keep sending arms to Israel. Under U.S. law, the government is required to cut off weapons shipments to countries preventing the delivery of U.S.-backed aid. Days after receiving the reports, Blinken told Congress, quote, "We do not currently assess that the Israeli government is prohibiting or otherwise restricting the transport or delivery of U.S. humanitarian assistance." On Tuesday, the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, called for Blinken's resignation, accusing him of lying to Congress. Biden was asked about the ProPublica report Wednesday on CBS. This was his response.
So this is actually pretty typical. We had a report to put out on the humanitarian situation in Gaza and what Israel was doing to try to make sure that people got the assistance they needed. And I had different assessments from different parts of the State Department, from other agencies that were involved, like USAID. My job is to sort through them, which I did, draw some conclusions from that, and we put out our report, and we found that Israel needed to do a better job on the humanitarian assistance. We've seen improvements since then. It's still not sufficient.
Of course, that was U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. We're joined now by the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Brett Murphy, a reporter at ProPublica, where his new pieces headlined "Israel deliberately blocked humanitarian aid to Gaza. Two government bodies concluded Antony Blinken rejected them." Can you respond to Blinken's response to your report, Brett?
Yeah, so he said basically it was his decision to make. He was getting a lot of information, and he ultimately decided that it was not the assessment of the State Department that the Israelis were deliberately blocking aid. What he didn't mention, and what's really important to note here, is that the two agencies that had told him that they were in fact deliberately blocking aid, one being USAID, are the foremost experts in this. As you said, they are the ones responsible for delivering humanitarian assistance into Gaza, into war zones all over the world. In addition to that, his own Refugees Bureau had made the similar conclusion that a law called the Foreign Assistance Act should have been triggered because the Israelis were restricting aid. The other assessments he was receiving were nowhere near as detailed as what he received from USAID. They sent a 17-page memo with detailed evidence describing exactly what they knew to be the truth on the ground, and he ultimately rejected those findings in what he told Congress.
So if you could elaborate, Brett, also on what U.S. obligations are under the Foreign Assistance Act.
Sure, yeah. So it's this law that has not been used very much systematically, but it basically says a foreign partner or ally that is receiving military assistance from the U.S. cannot at the same time be blocking U.S.-backed humanitarian assistance into a war zone. If it is the conclusion of the U.S. government that is happening, the U.S. government is then required to cut off the military assistance. That's what the law says.
Is there any other context in which this has occurred, that the U.S. has denied that a country is preventing U.S. aid from getting in a conflict zone?
The last time it came up was Turkey and Armenia. That was kind of the original context of the law itself. But we have, like I was saying, that we have never truly been applying this in a systematic way. So this has really been an obscure provision in the Foreign Assistance Act. But this year, lawmakers, activist groups have been calling for the Biden administration to be using this exact provision.
We interviewed two people. Stacey Gilbert, the former senior advisor in the State Department's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. She resigned over this after 20 years in service. And Alex Smith, a former contractor for USAID, who was forced to resign over the Biden administration's support for the war on Gaza. Talk about the significance of what they did, and Antony Blinken understanding full well what they understood and why they left.
Stacey Gilbert worked on the report that Secretary Blinken ultimately delivered to Congress. She was working on the drafts of that report. She was in the Refugees Bureau. She had a very clear understanding of what was going on, and what she ultimately said when she resigned, when she saw the final version of what he had told Congress, she said, "We know this not to be true. We, the experts inside of the government, know that the truth on the ground is that the Israelis have been blocking humanitarian aid." into Gaza. This is what she said, and this is what she resigned over. And she said in her resignation letter, this report, what he told Congress, is going to haunt us.
And can you explain how detailed was that USAID memo that Blinken saw?
It was extremely detailed. 17 pages of evidence that they were bringing to bear. The example that stuck out to me the most was on food shipments that were being held up just 30 miles outside of Gaza. There was enough flour, USAID said, to feed 1.5 million Palestinians for at least 5 months. But at the time, this was in the February to March timeframe, the Israelis were not allowing flour into Gaza because they said it was going to the UN's branch there that had been accused of having ties to Hamas, so they were not allowing the flour in. And this is the kind of thing that was really bothering USAID and frustrating their efforts. They couldn't get food in, they couldn't get medicine in, other supplies. A lot of their trucks from like the Red Crescent, other humanitarian groups were being turned around because of items in there the Israelis were not allowing in. Aid workers had been killed, their convoys had been targeted. These were all the types of examples that USAID was telling Secretary Blinken.
And basically there's no recourse now, right? Because it's done, or is there anything that the Biden administration could now do differently?
Yeah, the law it was not just a one-time shot. And this is what the U.S. government said, too, in response. They said, we're always assessing the situation. They said that they believed that the situation was improving since after they applied leverage with this. The folks I talked to, both inside of government and in the humanitarian world, said that's not true at all. The situation is as bad as it's ever been, including since the Rafah incursion. But this law does not only have, whenever Blinken addresses Congress to it, it can be applied at any point.
That they could cut off, that the U.S. government could cut off aid to military arms to Israel.
Absolutely. If it assesses that the Israelis are deliberately blocking humanitarian assistance at any point, they can apply this law. That's right.
Brett Murphy, we want to thank you for being with us. Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter for ProPublica. We'll link to your new article, Israel Deliberately Blocked Humanitarian Aid to Gaza. 2 government bodies concluded Antony Blinken rejected them. And this update from the streets of New York. 25 protesters have been arrested outside the United Nations ahead of Prime Minister Netanyahu's arrival to address the UN on Friday. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
From the roots up, CIUT 89.5 FM, Toronto.
Should have gotta meet me halfway. Please, mister, give me one more night. I can't see my baby when you turn out the lights. I can stand there. How my world is gone wrong. I should have planned there. So I don't end up on my own. I can stand there. When my love is gone the